All right, so now we have our controls set up. We need to go ahead now and get the geometry to move along with the rig. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to use what's known as binding. What binding does is basically, in a nutshell, at the vert level, we are telling verts which joints to follow when the joints move. Now, we're going to be doing a soft bind. And by soft bind, what a soft bind is where like I could have three joints all affecting one piece of geometry, and so like one joint bends, and you have weighting that says, okay, these verts are weighted more towards this joint, but then as I get up here, these verts are weighted more towards this joint, and so what happens is you get joints that when they rotate, the geometry will bend, and that's how you do like characters, like how does an arm bend, and how does the geos like the arms are out straight. But then you bend your arm and the geo bends and it deforms the geometry. We're going to do a soft bind, but we're only going to bind, because this is a hard surface piece of geometry, we're only going to bind the geometry to one joint. So as that joint rotates, the entire piece of geometry will rotate with that joint. All right. The reason you can, like just like how we did the controls where the joints move with the controls, we could technically parent geometry or parent constrained geometry directly to a joint. So as the control turns the joint rotates, which in turn drives a parent constraint that causes the geometry to rotate. The reason I won't actually do it that way is because with a lot of the real-time engines and things like that and how things get translated from one 3D package to another, like to different renderers and things like that, they don't if we did a direct parent constraint, some things don't recognize that. Like a game engine won't recognize that at all. So I could do all this animation, but if I send it to a game engine, the game engine doesn't have the constraint. And so what would happen is the skeleton would move when it went to the game engine, but the geometry wouldn't go with it because the game doesn't know what a constraint is. It doesn't know how to do that. It needs the geo to actually move. And so what we're going to do is we're going to bind it. And that allows you to be able to export to game engines. And you can do animations here and send it to the game, and the game will move the bones and make the joints or the geometry move and stuff like that. All right. So, and there's various reasons why you would do it that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to get this geometry to move with the joints. So we have to kind of look at this as how the stuff actually does move, what joint moves what. And so we'll start at the bottom, the simple one. We'll select this joint. Oh, I said I was gonna bring this up earlier. You may have noticed, like, I keep turning polygons off because I need to vert snap. When you're vert snapping any polygon that exists, it will snap to any vert that exists. So by hiding the polygons, joints are treated as verts. So I can snap to the individual joints. If I had locators in here, I can vert, like whenever I was showing the how do you deal with putting your rig in the scene and how do you get stuff to stick in the track. You can vert snap to locators. There's a lot of things that you can vert snap to. However, there is what's known as a selection order whenever you select something. So if I drag select right now, notice it only grabs the joint. And that is because in your preferences, Windows settings preferences, there is a selection option down here. And down here, there is a priority of what gets selected. And right now, I'm in animation priority. And so in animation priority, that means anything animation-wise gets selected first. So polygons get put way down at the bottom. So polygon mesh is way down here, but curves and stuff are up here at the top. So curve, it's up here somewhere. Anyway, and geo. Polygons are at the bottom. Joints are kind of up at the top before geo. So if I drag select, I'll cancel out of that. So if I drag select, it's going to grab the joint first. This can also cause a problem if you're trying to grab some stuff on a polygon and you do this. It's going to deselect and it's only going to grab the joint because the joint has priority. All right. So when you're doing stuff with, as long as you drag select, you're good. You can go ahead and select wherever you want. So I'm not going to turn the polygons off this time because I can just drag select the joint. I can select the this guy. And what I'm going to do now is what's known as a bind. So the way you do a bind is it's up here under skin. So with the joint tool, it's under skeleton. For binding, it's under skin, and we're going to do bind skin. But I want to go to the option box on this because you guys need to make a couple changes. All right, so I'm going to go to bind skin option box. I'm going to open this guy up. All right, so I'm going to go in and reset this back to default. All right, and so what it says is there's a lot of like ways that you can bind, and you can tell it like how many joints are allowed to influence the geometry you have selected, and stuff like that. And how does the bind actually work? So first thing is, what do you want to bind the geometry to? So right now I selected this bottom joint and I selected this base. And so I can bind to the joint hierarchy, and what that's going to do is it's going to take this base and it's going to bind it to the entire joint chain, like every joint in the chain. It's going to bind it to all of it. But I don't want that. What I want to do is I want to go in here and I say only bind to the selected joints. So I only selected the bottom joint. So that's the only one I want to bind to. All right. So we'll set that to selected joints. Bind method closest distance is fine. It doesn't really matter because it's only going to one joint for us anyway. They have other stuff in here. They have like voxel based and heat maps, and there's all kinds of stuff. It's more advanced. You'll learn later. Closest distance for us is fine. This will be okay. Skinning method, classic linear is fine. You don't have to worry about that. And all this stuff is really fine. Just to be safe, I recommend you take your max influences down to 1. All right. That way you don't, if maybe you accidentally say bind selected joints and it's joint hierarchy. If you set max influences to 1 and you select the bottom joint, generally I think it's going to stick with that one joint. But if you get into a situation where you have geometry that crosses multiple joints, it may bind to multiples. So by setting it to max influences, you're saying only bind this to 1. The influence for each vert is only 1 joint. All right. But you really want to make sure this is selected joints, max influence is 1. All right. Everything else in here is fine for what we're doing. It has more relevancy when you start doing actual smooth skinning. But we're just doing single, like basically like a hard skin. So, all right. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say bind skin. Boom. You may not see much change. All right. But if I select the control, let me grab the master. If I select the master control, I say, let's move this master control. Oh, look, my geo moves with it. All right, looks like I have a normals issue there. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's covered up, but I never even paid attention to that. I've never pulled the base off before. All right. So now our base is bound. If I rotate this guy, if I take this and rotate it, the base rotates with it too. All right. It's bound to that joint. Okay. So now we just do this for the rest of the joints that we need to bind to. All right, so now I have the twist. So that was the base. Now I need this twist part. So this guy is going to go to this joint. This is my twist joint, arm base twist. All right, so same thing. Skeleton, or I'm sorry, skin, bind skin. I'm going to go to the option box on this so I can keep it open. And I'll say, make sure it's selected joints, 1 influence, apply. Double check it real quick. Grab this guy, rotate it. Hey, check it out. It's rotating. See how the other geometry doesn't move with it? So now I can be like, it rotates this way. Notice the base doesn't rotate, the bottom part. All right, cool. I have this one little motor over here that's not bound to anything yet, so I can take care of that guy too. So I can say this guy. And the twist joint, which is right here, I do it again, apply. So now when I grab this guy and rotate it, now the motor goes with it. Cool? And so now we just run up the chain and we do this whole thing. Now remember, this joint doesn't do anything. It's just a holder to go up into this angle. So this is all already bound. All right, so now I can go ahead and so if I select this guy, so we can go to wireframe mode so you can see it a little better. All right, so now we need this joint, and it's not bound to anything yet. I need it to drive this guy. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that guy. Apply. Boom. Now this joint, when it rotates, takes that piece with it when it rotates. All right. See, rigging's easy. Rigging's a piece of cake. Got this joint, I need it to tie to this guy. Apply. Boom. Joint rotates. Control rotates the joint. We'll be locking stuff out here pretty soon. Alright. Same thing up here. I need this guy to twist. This with the twist joint. That's this guy. Apply. Now this control. Twist this guy. Awesome. Come on down. Now we got this joint, this piece of geo. Bind it. Easy peasy. Right. Then we have this twist joint here. So I need to grab this guy and we'll bind this guy. Awesome. So now this rotates. Turns that. Cool. Same thing here. Grab this joint. Don't have to worry about that joint down there because it's just there to hold these two joints together. So now I can grab this guy, bind it. Same thing over here. This guy. Oh wait, hang on. Did I not get this twisted back into position? That looks weird. Something dropped. Do I have a joint? Do I have something moved? I may have moved a joint and not put it back. I think it was this one. Nope. One of these joints had the rotation on it. Is it this control? I've moved something somewhere. I'm not going to worry about that now. I can see right now this has been moved. Somehow I moved a joint somewhere. Oops. Oh well. I'll just live with it. It's gonna work, even though it's not in the right spot. It'll still work. All right. So this joint, this piece of geo, bind it. This joint. This piece of geo, bind it. See, it'll still work because the rotation's there. I think it's a little off though. This guy. So it still rotates. You want to watch for something like this. I think somewhere along the line while I was talking, I moved something I shouldn't have moved, and I actually rotated it by accident, and I think it froze. Somewhere in here, one of my joints has got some kind of rotation on it. It's not this guy. I'm looking for rotations over here. And somewhere along the chain, I've moved this guy. And it's probably while I was talking. Oh, it's this guy. Yeah, this is the one I did wrong. And I got a slight rotation. If I set this back to 0, I bet it lines up down there now. Well, it won't rotate now because I bet that's it. There's a slight Z rotation and it moved. But yeah, you want to make sure you have it. Yeah, not even these are lined up. These are not lined up either. But anyway, be careful of stuff like that. So we have that. So now, go back to this. So now whenever I move this guy around, except for those hoses, we'll deal with the hoses later. So now, look at that. It's moving. 6. See with all the stuff on it. Put that back. It doesn't matter that these joints come out, like this joint exists outside the geometry. It's irrelevant because we're only using it to drive that rotation. So whenever I grab this control and rotate, you know, it doesn't matter that it's sticking out. If I render this, you're not going to see that bone. All right. So we have that, and so now we have a bind. It's bound. I can actually take this at this point and go animate it, go run around and animate stuff. All right. But we're going to have to make this scalable because you guys are going to be putting these in your scenes. You may not like the size this is at currently. You maybe need to scale it down. These shots, the shots you get, the shot I'm showing in the video may not be the shot you have because I'm going to change these out every month. So I'm not going to re-record all these videos. So you know, you may need to scale your robot to place it in the scene so it doesn't look weird. So we'll get into how to get it scalable, but I need to get everything else done first. All right. So now that's bound, now we can go and I'm going to show you guys how to do the hoses, because that's the last piece. Because if I take this guy and move it right now and just slide it out of the way, we have these hoses left. So how do we deal with these? So I'm going to show you guys how to work with that. And so we'll get into some IK. All this is what's known as FK, meaning forward kinematics. And what that means is I take this control and rotate it. All the other controls rotate with it. And it's called forward kinematics, meaning I rotate this control, it forces forward solve downwind that moves everything with it. IK is where I actually grab it from the front. It's called inverse kinematics, meaning I grab a control and move it, and all these joints will reorient themselves to accommodate the new position. So that's like your IK arms on a character, where you can move the box around and the elbow will automatically bend and your arm will move where you need it to go. All right, so we'll get into a little bit of that later. All right.